of information regarding the events they chose to highlight in their reports. Okay. It is highly irresponsible and offensive for the Department of Justice to make allegations that have zero insight about the incidents they reported on. We hope this information will be provided in a timely manner to inform local reporting of what's going on with this investigation. Recently, the Arizona Republic Editorial Board decided to come after the Phoenix Police Department on an article dated June 23rd of this year by claiming the only path to systemic reform is through a federal mandate known as a consent decree. This path is evasive, it's expensive, but the Arizona Editorial Board claims it's the only mechanism that promises accountability. Completely untrue. This assessment is completely wrong, and there are several reasons for that assessment being completely wrong. Tell me what city, and there's a bunch of reporters in this room, came out better after entering into a consent decree with the Department of Justice. The answer is zero. And I've got some stats that will not only prove what I'm saying is true, but it's also going to be, the numbers are staggering and that's just astonishing of how bad the DOJ, when they come into your city, destroys your city. The data will show that when cities enter into this consent decree, the Department of Justice, there's an increase in violent crimes, there's a reduction in the overall workforce, and a further deterioration in recruitment. Folks, the Department of Justice has a 30-year record of failing, time after time after time. 30 years of failure is what the Department of Justice represents. I've heard a lot about defunding police. How about we defund the Department of Justice and send them back to DC? They destroy cities, and they do it under the auspice of wanting to help, but instead they destroy. This isn't about making communities safer. This isn't about making cities safer or people feeling safer. This is about the Department of Justice's backdoor attempt to federalize law enforcement through failed practices, failed policies. They get to sit behind the curtains while cities crumble, and they point their fingers at the police chiefs. They point them at the men and women doing this job, but they're a bunch of bureaucrats that don't have any idea what the hell they're doing. Perfect example, our own backyard, MCSO, 2014. They entered into an injunctive order. The Maricopa County Sheriff's Department, I'm sure you're all familiar with that. Their elected sheriff at the time, who was a Democrat, Paul Penzone, actually resigned early to go work in the private sector because, as he stated, his hands under this Department of Justice's monitoring program handcuffed him and his staff from their ability to be able to do their job safely and effectively and to implement the changes that they knew were best for the community here locally. But when you have bureaucrats 3,000 miles away who aren't even sitting that butt in their seats in the county, charging the taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars throughout this course of this investigation to not even be here present, how do they know what's best for the community? They don't. It's all a farce. It's a dog and pony show to make it look like somebody's doing something for the sake of doing something. And they failed. In 2012 to 2023, and all the data that I'm giving you is sourced on public available websites, Albuquerque, New Mexico entered into a consent decree. So over 11 years now, they saw an 80.27% increase in violent crimes. 2010 to 2023, New Orleans PD entered into a consent decree with the Department of Justice. These wonderful policies and oversight programs led to a 97.45% increase in violent crimes. Is that what you want in your community? I don't. 2011 to present, Seattle, Washington, Department of Justice consent decree, 52.59% spike in violent crimes. What special secret formula does the Department of Justice possess that makes them want to convince councils and community members that they can improve local law enforcement when they're 3,000 miles away looking at a computer screen or being academics, not being out on the streets doing this job? Folks, I've been a police officer in the state of Arizona for 25 years. I'm a Valley native. I grew up in Maryville. And I can tell you the Department of Justice is a complete waste of time. Their reports are inaccurate. And it's quite disgusting that the reports that they put out there, some people even believe are factual. So what standards or policies does the Department of Justice think that they can improve that the Phoenix mayor, the Phoenix City Council, the Phoenix Police Chief, and local community groups can't work out together on their own? We talk about community policing all the time. We solve problems locally, not with federal oversight. Not with federal oversight that costs hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer money. Phoenix PD fields millions of calls for service every year. Yet we only hear about the 10 to 12 of the most worst cases that are out there, but we never hear about the suspect conduct. We only hear about what the officers did. Phoenix PD does it right 99.97% of the time. That's better than doctors and malpractice lawsuits. And these are men and women out on the streets that are making split-second decisions, life or death situations in split seconds, and they're getting it right 99.97% of the time. I'm proud of those numbers. I'm proud of the Phoenix Police Department, the men and women out on the streets that do this job. But I'm not here at all to entertain the thought of the Department of Justice stepping in and ruining the city. Is it possible that maybe that the Department of Justice wants to come into Phoenix because of a former radical city council member who wants to destroy the city because he hates himself and his community? Is that why we're here today? So everyone could feel the pain that he felt? Well, he's no longer in that council because thanks to the people of Phoenix, they voted him out of office. Worse yet, with these staggering numbers and the failure rate of the Department of Justice, when they come in and destroy communities, who holds the Department of Justice accountable? They get to come into your communities like a monsoon storm, like a great haboob, destroy everything, and then walk away with hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer money from the city of Phoenix. They get to wash their hands of it and disappear. But we're left picking up the pieces. Say no to the Department of Justice and write your mayor, council members, and tell them that you don't support the Department of Justice coming in to destroy this community. Again, Phoenix deserves better than that. The taxpayers, the men and women who wear this badge, who took an oath to defend their communities and keep their communities safe, they deserve better than to have a faceless, nameless DC bureaucrat hiding behind the curtains, running the city into the ground. Federal oversight will directly impact recruitment and retention within the Phoenix Police Department. A recent survey of the Phoenix Law Enforcement Association's membership indicated that 56.57% are considering retiring or lateraling to another agency within the next 3 to 6 months if this DOJ comes into the city. When asked if the city of Phoenix and Phoenix PD did not enter into the agreement, again, did not enter into this agreement, 89.87% said they would stay at Phoenix PD and not retire and not lateral in the next 3 to 6 months. The men and women that do this job each and every day in their communities, they know exactly what a DOJ consent decree means. They know exactly what it means to have the feds come in and destroy the city. The Phoenix mayor, Phoenix City Council, Phoenix residents, they have the tools and resources in place to implement the needed changes and to hold the department accountable. And we are urging the Phoenix mayor, Phoenix City Council, to adamantly reject any federal oversight to the Phoenix Police Department, and let's maintain local control with the community, the chief, and council where it should be. With that being said, we are lucky to have a Maricopa County attorney, Rachel Mitchell, who understands what is at risk. and has seen firsthand how detrimental the Department of Justice oversight is for law enforcement agencies and our communities. County Attorney Rachel Mitchell, she understands that we need to do what is best to keep our residents safe, protect crime victims, and hold criminals accountable. The Department of Justice oversight will make our communities less safe. We'll have fewer police officers, violent crimes will spike. This isn't me guessing or trying to scare people or fearmonger. I'll say it again, the Department of Justice, based on their own numbers, has a 30-year track record of complete, total, disastrous failures. Why bring that into the city? With that being said, I'd like to invite Maricopa County Attorney Rachel Mitchell to give a few remarks of her own. Rachel.
Thank you. Thank you, Justin, and thank you, Daryl Criplin, for having me here. It is an honor to stand with the Arizona Police Association and the Phoenix Law Enforcement Association this morning. This is not a new subject for me. I have been vocal about the dangers of DOJ oversight and the risks facing the city of Phoenix if they were to enter into a consent agreement. After having read the so-called DOJ report, I'm even more concerned. At best, and believe me, I'm being generous when I say that, this report is nothing more than a politically driven document prepared by a federal agency focused on undermining local law enforcement. Even though the city spent 3 years and millions of dollars providing DOJ with everything they asked for, the DOJ instead focused on a precious few cases. They used a tiny, tiny sample to find exactly what they wanted to find. Their report, it doesn't even pass the smell test, the headline test, or any other tests that I can think of. It's bad, it's wrong, and it's dangerous for the citizens of Phoenix. Incidentally, as they prepared their misguided report, they also paused a moment to take a swipe at the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. It had to do with the cases surrounding the downtown protests that happened here in 2020. The DOJ report implied and really, frankly, stated that had the state bar not come into my office to clean house, that things would have not changed. And I was going to say that's nonsense. That's a lie. Lawyers in my office spotted the problem and they raised it to the highest levels of leadership at the time. I know this for a fact because I was one of those lawyers. When I was appointed then to take over as county attorney, I'm the one who fired the attorney who created the problem. We referred her to the state bar along with others. I testified against her at the state bar hearing. Other attorneys in my office testified against her at the state bar hearing. Nobody was okay with what happened that she did. If the DOJ can't get even that portion of the story straight, something that I know from the inside, imagine what they've done with the rest of their assessment. Public safety is the backbone of not only our community, but just our system of government. If we don't have law and order, if we don't feel safe, then we have no foundation on which to build anything else. Abuse of that important role will not be tolerated. It never has been, and it never will be, not even by the DOJ. But the DOJ's report overlooked thousands of cases in which our police officers did the right thing. They arrested the right perpetrators in the right way, and they went out of their way to take care of those who were harmed. I echo Justin's point. When has a city come out of a consent decree or any other DOJ oversight and been better? You know, Ronald Reagan said that 9 of the most terrifying words in the English language were, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." And I can't help but think of the DOJ when I hear those words. They're terrifying coming from them. In addition to the consistent increases in violent crime we see in cities across the country that are beholden to a consent decree, that they are suffering from increases in crime, demoralization of their police force. I believe what Justin said. I know that this consent decree or any other DOJ oversight is going to cause Phoenix Police to lose even more officers. That's quite a hit for an agency that is already suffering from a shortage of over 600 officers. The outlook is even worse when you consider the financial cost. As you know, as county attorney, not only am I the chief prosecutor, but I am also the county's attorney, so I represent the sheriff's office. And what I can tell you is this: the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office is not supervised by the sheriff that the people of Maricopa County have elected. Maricopa County turned away the sheriff under which the DOJ found its tentacles, a way to wrap its tentacles around the sheriff's office, and they elected a different sheriff from a different political party. But I can tell you that the sheriff's office is not overseen by that person that's in office or the person that just resigned. It's overseen by a federal judge. Now, that's not a consent decree. It was because they chose to fight the consent decree and what the DOJ did afterwards. Taxpayers have covered the expenses to the tune of over $250 billion with a B, dollars, to pay for this. And because the federal officer or the oversight person only gets paid as long as he continues to find problems, there is zero incentive for him to find no problems. He has every incentive to keep going and keep finding problems. You talk about mission creep, you don't even remember why we started with this oversight, with some of the things that this federal monitor is coming up with now. And Phoenix would face the same fate. Oversight of the Phoenix Police Department should remain with Chief Michael Sullivan and the City Council, which answers to the voters. The men and women of Phoenix Police who put their lives on the line every single day for us, deserve our gratitude and not our condemnation. Everyone needs to recognize that the carpetbaggers from the Department of Justice are not the solution. You've heard the expression, a solution in search of a problem. Well, the DOJ is a problem in search of a problem. So with that, we are happy to take questions from people.
Mr. Harris, you mentioned that you described the report as irresponsible and lacking sourcing. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, they didn't cite any of the specific details of what they listed in their report. So they took this entire investigation into one incident, let's say, and they highlighted it with bookends, and they left everything out in the middle to let the viewers kind of read into what they were trying to say. So I know over the course of the next several weeks, there should be some information that's coming out publicly that breaks down each of those investigations. I didn't want to get into specifics because there's too much to remember. But when the Department of Justice is coming in and they are intentionally changing the context of all the stuff that's in the middle to come to the beginning and the end so the viewers can reach their own conclusions, that's reckless, it's irresponsible, and it's not police work.
Are you calling on the city and city officials to fight this in court? Because that's really...
I'm calling them to fight this wherever they need to fight it, to kick the DOJ back to Washington. I don't care where they fight it. The mayor and council need to understand that what the Phoenix Police Department is doing with the 5th largest city in the country, being understaffed, overworked, these men and women are kicking butt. And to have this kind of ridicule, these kind of misstatements, these deliberate half-truths being told is absolutely reckless, and it just goes to show that the city of Phoenix local control, the community with local control with the police chief and the mayor and council can hold the department more accountable than somebody 3,000 miles away. It's like anything else. Do you want your older brother telling you how to raise your kids at home and then say, oh, by the way, I'm going to charge you for my advice, although I haven't seen my nieces and nephews in 30 years? I mean, that's what we're doing. There's hundreds of millions of dollars being spent right now with Maricopa County, paying the DOJ for an investigation or an inquiry that's never going to end. But you got to ask yourselves, this isn't necessarily just about the police department. This money is being paid out of general fund from Maricopa County. If the city of Phoenix were to enter into this program, this agreement with the feds, and these hundreds of millions of dollars are spent, ask yourselves this: could that go for hiring more officers? Can that go to building homeless shelters? Can that go to more health care for low-income folks? Can this money be better spent? Because it all comes out of the same pot. There's not a separate pot of money for DOJ expenditures, and they'll never leave. As County Attorney Rachel Mitchell said, they came into MCSO for a specific purpose. And now nobody even knows what that purpose is anymore, because this person who gets paid because they're here doing this is going to fire themselves if they say, hey, you guys are good to go, wash their hands and go somewhere else.
All right, next up, right. Tell me, is there any concern, the sheriff's office here had fought it and lost, and so there are some that point to the money that was spent doing that. How do you justify that moving forward?
Because that was money well spent. Just because you lose doesn't mean it wasn't worth the squeeze. If you don't stand up to the Department of Justice and they come in and just steamroll your city, a little bit of money up front fighting them to keep them out is well worth the long in return if they win. And even if they lose, cities need to start standing up to the DOJ, and hopefully we'll get a political climate that changes and is one that is less intrusive, because this federalizing of local law enforcement, folks, is scary. And this is the bigger picture for the DOJ. A lot of these folks under the Department of Justice aren't police officers. They've never been in law enforcement. They're academics that study things in college and believe that these theories are good. And they have no idea what in the hell they're doing.
Heidi.
What's your response to activist groups who say that they have suffered discrimination and had their rights violated by Phoenix police, and they've been coming to the council for years with similar things that were in the DOJ report, who also don't want a consent decree, not in favor of one?
The community groups are not? I'm sorry.
Put air in action. And a handful of other groups had a press conference a couple weeks ago saying that they've been coming to the city council for years with similar complaints that were found in the DOJ report, and they want the police department to be held accountable, but they're also not in favor of a consent decree. So what's your response to that, and what does accountability look like? Well,
the accountability here is, one, again, community groups getting together. It's not just going to the DOJ. They're not the end-all, means-all. They don't know what the hell they're doing. But if there are community members that feel like they've been race stereotyped or treated unfairly, the City of Phoenix has a professional standards bureau. They investigate cops. And I can tell you, regardless of what people think, the climate change in law enforcement, cops don't support bad cops. And if they've done something wrong and the findings prove that, those officers would be held accountable. But I can also tell you, I've been in this position for 25 years in law enforcement, and believe it or not, some people file complaints that are unjust. So again, it all comes down to what's in the investigation and what happened. You know, I mean, we've heard things as far as, I can't believe that person got shot, although that suspect was pointing a gun at the officer. What are we supposed to do? So what I'm saying is, it's hard to generalize everything from the 30,000-foot view. Every person's complaint should be taken seriously and on its own merit, because every case is going to be unique, whether what that complaint is. I can tell you that, again, I grew up in West Phoenix. I have a lot of friends that are different races and cultures. And I can tell you that I've seen maybe not some of the most honest statements being made at times, because that doesn't serve the narrative of that inflammatory comment to get people support. But I truly believe that the Phoenix Police Department, their Professional Standards Bureau, along with their staff and the Phoenix Law Enforcement Association, if an officer in the city of Phoenix does something wrong, from what I've seen, they're going to be held accountable as long as there's merit to that complaint. But just going on TV and claiming all these things happened without any proof, but just to say it, is inflammatory, but it serves the purpose of some groups.
All right, next up, Greg.
Can you provide some clarity on the source for the data where you said that those cities you listed all had some 80% rise increase in crime. The data you listed went into past COVID, where there was reports of nationwide increases in crime. Can you provide some more details to show specifically consent decrees led to increases in crime?
It's all right here. There's not any one source. They're all public sources, but what you're talking about is this is an aggregate over the last 11, 12 years, depending on when they went in, entered into these agreements. Again, this information at some point will be made all public, but this is for our research, which is just something the Department of Justice didn't do because they're not cops. We're cops. We do our research, right? So again, there's several resources listed here that this information was found off of. And again, not only that, but it was broken down further into this spreadsheet of the aggregate of what year it was and up to 2023. The reason that's up to 2023 is exactly July 20th of 2023 is because data usually is about a year behind. So we have the resources, we have the sites, we have the research to show that the Department of Justice is a failure. I don't even know why they exist, to be honest with you.
My main question is for Rachel. The DOJ touted the homeless situation as historical, as something that was groundbreaking and new. What was your take reading through the report on that? I also know we've had a recent Supreme Court case that also ruled on this as well.
Well, yeah, thanks. I was going to bring that up because keep in mind this report was written prior to the recent Supreme Court case coming down. What was interesting to me was when they first started this oversight very early on, they met with the Maricopa County Attorney's Office, and they went in with the notion that they were going to look at that. And so it just shows to me what we teach against in law enforcement and prosecution, which is confirmation bias. They found exactly what they were looking for in this, and they fail, again, as Justin said, to look at the entire situation. We already know of quotes that they have used in their report that actually are not backed up by actual recordings that they took. And when you compare the actual quotes to what was cited in the report, it's not what the police were talking about. The police were talking about making sure people are safe and addressing criminal behavior. But they make it sound like the police are just going in and picking on people who are, homeless, and that's not correct. That's not what we've seen.
Last question.
Quick question for the county attorney. Since since you do have experience,
You got to be faster.
Yeah. Sorry. Since you do have experience dealing with the sheriff's office that's under a consent decree and federal monitor, when they submit filings, I'm wondering, do those look different? Does it change how your office handles or the conversations that you have? Because of that, I'm just trying to get a sense of how that might change how your office works.
Well, I can answer how it impacts prosecution. You have so many resources that are now dedicated to dance to the Svengali of the federal monitor that you don't have enough resources where they need to be doing investigations into, for example, homicides and other violent crimes. So that's one of the ways it affects. It slows down investigations when you don't have enough personnel, addressing that. But I also look at the stats, and what you see is an overall decrease in the ability and ultimately willingness to police. And so I think the reason some of the groups recognize that the consent decree is not the answer is because they know that people will ultimately be less safe because the police will just stop policing as much as they need to keep the community as safe as we are. And that's just unacceptable.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, everybody.